Today I'm going to show you how to work with AI APIs and how to avoid this issue of Wized telling you failed to fetch due to a browser timeout. So let's get right started. Most of the time, if you're using with ChatGPT, if you're using ChatGPT's API, you will probably have one direct API call. So you will have one request where you're calling ChatGPT OpenAI, and you will immediately get a response that may take 60 seconds, 40 seconds, a minute, 2 minutes. It shouldn't take too long, but this is what it's going to take. A lot of people now are having that issue that they are doing the request, and in Xano it has a 10-second timeout. So it will time out before they get the response, right? Think of it like this. You're calling your friend, and after one beep, you're hanging up. Your friend is right there, maybe cannot get there on the one beep. The friend would have took the phone call, but you hang up too quick. This is what's going on here. It's the same scenario. So what you want to do, first of all, if you're using with ChatGPT and you're facing any issues, the first thing you want to do is you want to go to Xano or your backend and extend the timeout time to at least a minute, right? Then if you still have that issue and it says failed to fetch on Wized, you are probably facing a browser timeout. And today I want to show you how to avoid any browser timeouts by a way that most AI APIs are already set up. Because most AI API provider, besides OpenAI, already figured out that there are browser timeouts. So what they did is they split up their API in a receive request and into a get status, a send status, or send result. So think of it like this. You're going to the restaurant and you have the server and you say, I would love to have this and this, right? And the server will take your note, will bring it to the chef, and the chef in the kitchen will prepare it. And when it is done, the server will bring it back to you. This is exactly what most of those AI APIs are doing. They're taking your order, they're preparing it in the kitchen, and then there is another server only designated to telling you, oh no, the chef is still working on there, or yeah, actually it's done, here you go. So this is how they build it. And this is a great way because this reduces the work that we have to do. And this tutorial is focusing on how to build that if they already have done it. So if your AI API provider has already those 2 steps, we can save ourselves building a database, and this is what we're doing in this video. There will be another video coming how to do this with OpenAI, because as far as I'm concerned, or as far as I know, they don't have that model yet. They may, if they move into video, they may apply that for all their APIs. I'm not completely sure, but this is how that is going. But we can split that up ourselves in Xano. But today we're going to work with something that was already split up, just so that you know. So what we have to do is we have to create 2 requests. One request creating the image in case we're using image or video generation. So one request will send the prompt to the API and receive an ID. Then this request will be in the queue. So they will process that. And then we have another API that will tell us processing, almost done, finished. And yeah. And when that fetch image API tells us finished, it will also give us the result, so the URL to the file. So they split it up in 2 parts. And the way I like to build that is I don't like to configure the APIs in Wized itself, just to make sure that I'm aligned with security best practices. So what we're going to do, we're going to go to Xano, and we have those 2 endpoints set up in Xano. First is create image. So we're going to receive the prompt in here, and we're going to make an API call to Leonardo AI and set the information and the configurations. And yeah, then we're going to create a variable with the response result, and we're going to return that. This will contain our ID that will be a UUID, a random string number that will be the identifier by which we will be calling the API and telling them, wait a sec, is number 4587 already done? Yes, nice. Okay, here's the file. So now we're going to fetch the image. That's the part 2. So we have this generation ID, which we got from the first request. We can store it as a variable. I like to store it as a query parameter so that when a user reloads the page, it still has the process because it's from the URL. But if they open it from another device, it continues there as well. I really like that. But yeah, you can do this however you want. You can just use an existing variable, a session variable, however you want. But yeah, so we have this generation ID here, and we're doing a get call to get the status. So let's actually send something to the initial API right here. Okay, as you can see, we're getting this generation ID, and it just cost me 30 credits. And now we're going to the fetch request. We're having this generation ID here, and we're going to call it. It's already calling it automatically. You see, the precondition failed because we didn't get anything yet. So we're going to retry it. And if it fails, it already puts it on a 10-second sleep on Xano, just to make sure that we're not doing too many API calls at a time. You could also have the delay in Wized, but I like to do that in Xano because it is a way more convenient way to work with from their low-code aspect of building those functions. Yeah, and we just got the response. As you can see, we got an error because nothing was there. And now that it is there, we're going to get the response, and we're going to display the data right in here. So now we're going to go to the other endpoint and walk a bit through the configuration. We're sending the generation ID, and we're going to make a API call to get the status of it, right? And then we're going to create a variable with a response. And we're going to create an attachment array because in this case, we're going to get multiple image responses. So what we're going to do is I should have mentioned, we have a conditional if statement in here. So if this response was successful, we got our data, we're going to set the status so that we don't have the other things up there or the other things down there. We only want the data we're getting from the API. We don't need the headers and all of that. And then we create out of that an array with all the images we get. It can be the text, it can be your videos. You only need to do this if you want multiple ones. So how we're doing that is we're just setting an empty array and we're adding stuff onto that. So we're doing a for each loop on the status response dot generation. So on the, let me just really quick do a stop and debug so you can see how that looks for simplification. But we're essentially looping over the generations we're getting. So let me just go to the request history, which is my favorite tool in here because it is so simple and it will make it way simpler. Perfect. So yeah, let's just run this. And as you can see, we are getting this array of 2 generated images. So we're looping over this array. This is what we are doing here. I just wanted to showcase that so that you have an idea of how that is going. Okay, then we create an empty array and we're going to add stuff on that. So we're looping over this here, those 2 images, we're looping over it. We're taking the URL, turning it into an attachment, and then we're adding the attachment, the metadata of the attachment, to the end of this array. So now we have 1 added, and it will loop the second time, and we're adding this, turning this into an attachment and adding this into the array as well. And then in the database, we're just going to add, as on the array field that contains a list of attachment, we're just going to add the list of attachments. And that's how easy that is going. And that's how we are having multiple things in here. Perfect. Let's just remove this stop and debug. And this is what you're seeing when we have a longer API response. If we're not getting any results back, right? If we're not getting anything, we will sleep for 10 seconds just so that we have a buffer in between until we try the next API call, because we don't want to do 500 API calls. So we have this sleeper function so that we allow a bit more time. So we give, if it fails, we put it in a 10-second sleep until we get the response. Because in Wized, the moment we were getting the response, we are retrying it. we're redoing the loop. So we need to have a buffer in between that. We could define the buffer in Wized, but that would be too much JavaScript. We just do it in Xano because it is just one colorful block. We just have to put a number in there, and we can work with that. Yeah, and then in the sleeper function, we still want to kill the sleeper function. So we're sleeping for 10 seconds, but we want to return an error. So we're doing a precondition set to, we are looking for the array that contains the images. We're applying the count filter, and we're looking that if the count is greater than 0, and then we're going to do something with it. If not, we're just failing this request. And if this request fails after 10 seconds, because we just put it in an artificial sleep, we're retrying it. And if this works, we're going to return this. Right here, we're going to return the images. If this fails, we're going in here, sleeping again for 10 seconds, failing the request, starting it again, going over here, and let's say it fails again, 10 seconds sleep, and then having it fail again, and now the image is there. We're requesting it again. Boom, we're getting this information, and now we're returning it here as an array. That's how simple that works. It is rather simple. You just have to figure out, or you just have to experiment how your API provider does those things. Yeah, and then this is the setup, and we already made a video on the breaking out of the loop if you are doing this pattern of looping over it until you're getting the response. It is very important because you don't want to have hundreds of API calls going on and may face any potential rate limitations. So it is worth looking into that video as well, and the video will be linked down here as well. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for your time. If you have any questions about AI, API calls, or Wized, or Xano in general, please feel free to put them down in the comments, and I will make a video just for you about that. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.